Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the House on Fire podcast, a show where we discuss with everyday Muslims topics that are uncomfortable to speak about so that we can all get along like a house on fire. Someone said to me, one man said to me on IG, he said, because I said something about a scholar, because he said something about Palestine, why he doesn't talk about Palestine. He says, you all need rehab before we can talk about Palestine.
Raw.
And then, and then the guy on IG goes, oh, you're probably one of those people who doesn't know how to pray Salah properly. And then another guy comes out of nowhere and he starts like stalking me on my profile. And says, I've checked your profile and you do rap music. You're so lame.
Yeah, failed the test. Oh, really?
He's like, you're sitting there in Canada. You have all the money. Why don't you do something? And I'm like, I have all the money. How does he know how much I have all the money? Because I said to him, look, Fard is about capability, isn't it? So if you're saying that you should do something, the fard has to be in line with, what you're talking about. So, for example, salah and zakah and fasting and all that, these are separate fards, separate fara'id, all these obligations, but they're not linked to the fard of liberating an occupied land, because in order to liberate an occupied land, you need, historically and Islamically speaking, you need an army to liberate it. You can see that's what's happened in the past.
Palestine, isn't it? Palestine was liberated by an army once, and an army again twice.
And an army again twice. So when has Palestine ever been liberated through everyone fasting or to everyone praying? Like, even historically, there's no Islamic evidence to link one separate obligation with another that's not linked. You're making... The Sheikh is making really leaps and bounds.
What was the brother's point of view? What was he saying?
His point of view was, you're a rapper and and you do music, and what did he say? Or you just sit there comfortably. You think on the day of judgment your stuff is gonna help you. You haven't done anything for Palestine. Why don't you go out there and fight jihad and all this stuff to me?
He sounds quite secular.
Yeah, but he's saying but at the same time he's like, why don't you go and fight jihad out there?
My guy mentioned Jay, like, how secular is he? I don't know.
Exactly.
He just threw everything at him, innit? He just threw everything. It's like, you're a rapper. That didn't stick, You're not praying enough. That didn't stick. Let's try something else. So let's just throw it all in there.
And all these guys just jump me at once, like all the loyalists of
where is this?
It's just on Instagram, isn't it? And obviously I don't tend to...
Do people fight on Instagram? I thought it's more of a Twitter thing.
Twitter or Facebook. No, Instagram is to be honest, Instagram is quite nice compared to Twitter. Twitter is cruel. But Instagram, you're productive, you say things, if positive things. If you don't have anything nice to say, usually people don't say. But nowadays, like, the trolls are getting worse. But Islamically, if you say something that feels like you're attacking a scholar, that comes across really badly.
I think that's never a way to go, man. It's just not sensible. Politically, it's not a good idea, is it?
It's not a good idea, no.
I feel like
it doesn't.
It doesn't go well.
So I said, look,
because it's all about who. It's not about what.
It's about
people look at the messenger as much as they look at the message.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like when things are happening online, Twitter is where it's at. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree.
Instagram was like, got chicks showing pictures. I don't know.
It's a marketplace.
Debate on IG.
It's a marketplace. It's a marketplace. I think on IG. Yeah. But at the same time, I think
actually I love my Instagram feed, man.
Is it?
My Instagram feed is the best.
Is it good?
It's nice and tailored.
There's a lot of remembrance on there.
Just get out.
No, that's the thing. Instagram, you'll find a lot of good reminders sometimes, like 5-second clip, 10-second clip. But then it'll be mixed in with something like, I don't know, some random, like the Sheikh is saying some weird thing. He's like, listen, you brothers, some brothers don't even get along with each other. And you're talking about all these, this is how he described Palestine and Kashmir. He said, these trouble spots. The fact that he called them trouble spots and occupied land says it all. He's not afraid to call them occupied.
It sounds a bit measured, doesn't it?
Someone commented saying, I know what the Sheikh's real rehab is. He's afraid of homeland security. So he's an American Sheikh, apparently. Obviously Arab, but he's in America, in Detroit or wherever he is. But that's the thing, they're saying things that sound good logically. They sound a bit logical when you think about it. But it's like a politician, the typical politician say, what do you want? Whatever you want, that's what you'll get. What does that mean? Yes, we can. Tomorrow is another day. All right, tomorrow's another day. What are you going to do tomorrow? Listen, tomorrow's another day. No, but what are you going to do tomorrow? Because you talk about rehab, but it's not like you're giving any detail. And it's sad because I'm sat there spending my time and energy trying on IT of all places, trying to write a very detailed, small, summarized way of explaining the situation as best as I can. Like, look, this is the solution. I appreciate what the Sheikh is saying and everything. Obviously, I could have worded it better. I was just annoyed with how he said it. And I was like, I said some stuff as well I shouldn't have said, but not in a rude way. I was just like,
this discussion, this little.
So I basically just said in the beginning, I said the Sheikh, it's interesting because not anything to the Sheikh, but I just went to a talk the other day about, a tafsir we had on Friday the other day about hypocrites, right? And one of the things about hypocrites was mentioned is that they use Islam as a shield. They use Islam, but they manipulate it in order to try to undermine Islam. It's ironic.
It's like Surah Tawbah.
Yes,
it was the Surah Tawbah. Yeah, what Allah Subhanahu wa Taala talks about the munafiqeen and the excuses that they make to Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam for staying behind. Yeah? They said, because the army is going out, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam going out, right? What Muslims want to fight in that situation? Tell me, Rasulullah is going out, Allah's with you, the Sahaba are with you.
So you're kind of using it as an excuse for apathy.
And what were the excuses that they were using? They were saying, because I fear that if I go out, I will see women, Christian women. Right? I'll see Christian women, yeah? And that they will tempt me. Yeah? So save me from that fitna by keeping me in Medina. Right? So the munafiqeen, this is the excuse that they use an Islamic justification to do something which is un-Islamic.
Subhanallah, that's crazy.
It's a feature of the munafiqeen. Right? Sorry, as you were saying, right?
Yeah, but it seems really familiar. That's exactly that was my point. Like, he's saying, all right, we need to improve ourselves indirectly. And the only way he said, Wallahi, the only way Allah will ever give us victory over our Quds is if we fix ourselves. And famously, obviously, he mentions the ayat, isn't it? Even in the comment section, it's mentioned. Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change what is within themselves. And I was like, that's an interesting ayat that people bring up, but they don't, in linguistically, it's talking about people collectively. It's not talking about individuals in the sense of that you as an individual fix certain things and it will have a domino effect on a collective situation. That's not how it works, because it's kind of like saying, and I said to a brother the other day, bro, if I said to you, we need to pray Salah in Jama'ah, and you said, what? We can't pray Salah in Jama'ah. I need to, I'm not, I just barely learned how to do wudu. The Jama'at doesn't even count until I learn every surah, and I need to learn more surahs, and then we can all pray in Jama'at. Yeah, but you just joined the Jama'at, isn't it? You're collectively working to establish a fard, isn't it? No one said that each individual needs to know a certain portion of the Quran in order. That's not an Islamic condition.
You know what, man? It's funny, yeah? These kind of verses and these kinds of points that you need to fix yourself first and perfect yourself, and Salah and Siyam and so on and so forth. These were the kind of things that were said to the Muslims when the colonialists were on their way. So when Britain invaded Egypt, right, the ulama at that time were saying exactly this point. So the masajid were full of Egyptians praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to save them from the onlooking invaders.
Mad.
And the ports were empty. And no one was waiting for them. So Britain was stumped when they saw no one waiting for them. Not one Egyptian was barreled and ready, preparing for the invasion, and they just swarmed the entire country.
Wait, so how did the Egyptians come to that point, such that when the British did come, even the British were expecting some pushback?
Yeah.
What was the prelude to that? Do you know?
So there was a thinking process, isn't it? Yeah. At some point, this is very, very late on. Right, this is very, very late on during our history, right? So we're talking about the 1800s, that kind of time, and this idea of secularism, that Islam came to guide you on your ritual matters, salah, siyam, fasting, some akhlaq, and these matters. This idea had seeped into the Muslim mentality, right? So we didn't make reference to Islam on defense, on kicking out the colonizer, right? On practical matters of politics, right? We didn't make any reference to this kind of thing at all. I mean, this was around when Muhammad Ali Pasha, when he introduced his secular reforms, there wasn't one bit of opposition that came out of Muslim maths. No, he wholesale secularized the entire country, copy-paste French constitution, not one alim spoke out. He made no justification for it even either. at least the Turks had to justify it somehow. All of these secular reforms, they had to justify it from
How
the
late?
angle of
How late in
Islam.
the game was this for the Ottomans?
This was in the 1800s,
Okay.
the late 1800s.
Okay.
This is very late in the game.
Is that what's it called? Tanzimat? Is that Tanzimat reform or was like? Because I know the Ottomans were making like later on
they were making gradual reforms. They were gradually making, but all of those reforms had to be justified. Muhammad Ali Pasha in Egypt didn't have to do that.
He just fully
because those ideas had been adopted, man. It's Western ideas, secularism, man. They've been wide scale adopted, right? People didn't feel that Islam was capable of dealing with the modern age.
That's interesting. You know what it reminds me of? You know Soviet Russia?
Yeah.
It's like you see that kind of similar thing. So back in the day, you know, they were formed on this kind of ideology, this new system.
Yeah.
And then over time, it's like they stopped spreading, like the Soviet state stopped spreading. They gave up on that. And then you had the, what's it called? Perestroika or something. I can't remember the name. It's some Russian name. Like, they had reforms, liberalizing reforms. It's like kind of towards the end of this power, you have this kind of compromising begin that starts, and like it's interesting. Isn't it, like it's an interesting parallel that you see that with Ottomans and the communists there. But
but sorry, man. Going on a slight sidetrack, your point is right, man. I think there's a practical point, which is that look, if someone was attacking you personally, right, you wouldn't drop on your knees and make sajda, right? You go to war, bro. You go to war, right? Someone rocked up at your house, right? It's
gonna break my beard because the colonizers are here because my beard is
exactly
on point.
Exactly.
I think what it is a lot of times like there's an instance in the Muslim history where they left the Sunnah. And the Muslims thought to themselves, we've left the Sunnah and we've lost this battle, so therefore let's revive the Sunnah of brushing our teeth with the miswak. So they started using the miswak, and the enemy saw them using the miswak, and they thought they were sharpening their teeth. Because they didn't know what a miswak was. They couldn't understand what was happening, right? So they were like confused.
And scared probably.
But people forget, when they make. This miswak thing, this happened after how much preparation? Right? The general was there, he made the plan, the strategies are ready, the Muslims were armed.
The state was there, the structure was there.
So all of this was there, isn't it?
And they jumped to the miswak.
Right. But in today's situation, the miswak isn't like the missing element, which is going to make all the difference. What about all this stuff?
Exactly. I think it's again how you refer back to Islam. Do you refer back to it haphazardly in a way that you just grasp at whatever seems to fit in the current reality? Oh, this nawafil here fits in, this sunnah fits in, so therefore this must be the thing that can fix everything? Or is there something deeper? Do we need to start from the fundamentals? Like what priority-wise in Islam, what do you refer to first? You refer to the fard, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the first thing. But it's funny, it's like when Ramadan comes and people don't pray the Isha, but they pray Taraweeh. And it's it's kind of like that. It's that secular mentality.
I think it's Islam, right? Okay, we can agree Islam is capable of solving any problem, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is al-Qadir. He is knowing of all things, right? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has he's put a hukm there for every single problem. A solution is there for every single problem. But you got to look in the right places, man. Yeah, you got to look in the right places, man. Yeah, when it's time to fight, you don't open up the book of Salah.
Yeah.
Right. When it's time to fast, I break my fast. Right. I don't open up the book of Hajj and go to the chapter of Tawaf. Right. And start walking around the table with the fox's cast in my hands. That's not what I do. Right. You go to the appropriate ahkam, the political matters, the political ahkam.
Yeah.
Right. And every other area is like this.
Exactly.
We do this with our salah. We do this with our fasting. Why can't we do this with those areas as well? It's not that. I don't think it's that complicated.
It's not that complicated. I think what it is, though, when you look at Islam as not an ideology but a spiritual matter, just the way Christians did with their religion, the Jews did with their religion, what they did is they turned everything into a spiritual journey and choice. So even we see this even amongst the Muslims when we talk about hijab. Oh well, I'm on a journey. I have to be ready to put it on. But imagine I'm caught without a seatbelt. By a police officer, and I go, well, this is part of my journey. Actually, I'm not ready yet. Like I understand that I have to wear a seatbelt, and it's by law, and I know it's man-made law, but whatever. That's another discussion. But I need to put the seatbelt on, but I'm not ready yet. I just don't feel I'm ready. And the police officer will look at you and say, "Okay, no problem. Good luck on your spiritual journey. Here's your ticket. Yeah, you can, but there's a consequence, isn't it? So because this is the law." But whose law is it? This is just the administrative, societal law made by people. This isn't even, we're talking about Allah's laws. So when it comes to Allah's laws, it's because of secularism, it seems it's become a personal choice and a journey.
That's the thing, innit? Because we don't know a time when Islam was the basis of all laws, right? Like, it's been almost 100 years, right? Since that was the case. Like, so all we know is that a secular paradigm. So it's very hard to jump out of that water and like unthink that way. I don't know how do you, what is the kind of, like that brother was saying, you need to go rehab. How do we get out of that? How do we rehab our way out of that way of thinking?
I think it comes from a framework of things. First, we have to understand, obviously, Islam's an ideology, for lack of a better word. It's a way. When we say it's a way of life, isn't it? We don't mean it's just a set of spiritual, individual acts of worship you do inside the masjid or inside your house. It doesn't just deal with civil issues or social issues or just your personal relationships between you and God or maybe your family or your friends. It's wider than that. It's your relationship with society. It's how society is governed, how society interacts, how one state interacts with another state, how our foreign policy works, how our how we militarily engage with other countries. All of that is obviously Islam has a say in it, and that's the whole point. Or else, it just rationally, it doesn't make sense for it to be a way of life and only deal with some parts of life and not all parts of life.
It's taking that Ramadan mindset, that taqwa mindset, and building on it and expanding it into all areas of life, right? So, not only asking us, so when you're in Ramadan, you do. There's a bit of that which happens, isn't it? And even post Ramadan, even after, is it halal? Is it haram?
Yeah.
That is it halal? Is it haram? Everywhere you go to a wedding,
The consciousness, yeah.
is it myth? Is it not? Right? You're gonna spend some money on something, right? You're gonna go to work, the work that you're doing, right? Is it halal? Is it not? Stopping, stuttering, carefully. It's like the example that Umar bin Khattab goes through. Taqwa, he gives the likeness of taqwa. He says the likeness of taqwa is walking through a thorny field. How would you walk through a thorny field? You'd raise up your jubba, step very carefully. Am I overstepping the boundaries? Am I overstepping the boundaries, right? It's like the hadith of halal bayyin wal haram bayyin, right? The halal is clear and the haram is clear, and in between them are ambiguous matters. So whoever delves into them will inevitably overstep the boundaries, right? It's like being very careful of the edges. Constantly asking yourself, is it halal? Is it haram? In everything. And in the beginning it's tough, like Ramadan is tough at the start, but then it becomes normal, right?
Yeah.
And it's just taking that mindset everywhere. Is it halal? Is it haram? Is it halal? Is it haram?
Yeah, and attached to that, it's like Ramadan, because everyone's on the same wavelength. Everyone knows Ramadan is that special time, and you can feel it. When you're looking at Muslims, across the street, and like you have that kind of glimpse of what it's like to live under that non-secular paradigm that actually, there is that heightened taqwa and everything like that. You kind of see that. In Ramadan, it's more clear. You have, brothers who are not as practicing, they become practicing. It's like, I like to say that like Ramadan's that gateway drug to Allah.
Yeah. I love that.
So
Halal gateway drug.
It's very halal gateway drug.
Pharmaceutical drug.
Exactly. So that's the thing, like, and you see that, and it's beautiful to see. But then Ramadan stops, ends, and you move on. But for a brief second there, you can kind of see, okay, maybe I can see an alternative way of living.
Yeah.
For a second there.
I mean, that
very interesting.
It's a very good point. At least on that horizontal plane, your interaction with other people, you can see Islam is there. In that vertical relationship, your interaction with state, government, authority, obviously it's not there at all yet. But at least on that plane, you can kind of sense it in Ramadan. Right? And imagine if it was everywhere. I think there's also another thing, which is that people need to ask themselves. The community, I think, in the UK is more Muslim community is more political than ever, right? We've got a brown PM, right? We've got a Muslim PM, right? In a First Minister in Scotland, right? So all of these things about glass ceiling and stuff like that, that's all gone away apparently, right? There's conditions, and we can talk about that at some point, right? But look, Muslims are entering the highest echelons, right? Top field of politics, right? And there's so much happening. I mean, just this week, Palestine, Sudan is happening. There's so many things happening in these Turkey elections. Pakistan, Iran, right? There's a massive list of things, and everyone's kind of. I feel the community is becoming more political. But when they talk about politics, is Islam part of the discussion? I think we need to start forcing Islam in as an entrance. Okay, look, people talk sometimes from the capitalist perspective, especially Muslims who are making money more nowadays. If you ask them, the 1950s generation who first came in, they were all on the Labour side, right? But now you have Muslims making money, Redbridge and all kind of areas, right? And they're like, get off the door, you lazy Muslims, right? You get those voices coming in as well. Where are the Islamic voices chiming in? I think we need to put it as a third option. Whenever we get the chance, point it out. Hold on, this is a third option. Like political elections. We've been banging at this door for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, however long many Muslims have been living in this country. We've been trying to get our step in. Things haven't really got better for us over the years. Actually, everything Muslims have achieved in this country has been off the back of our own work outside of politics. Mosques, masajid, madrasas, school. We've done it off our own back, despite the politics, right? So banging at this political door, are we Labour, are we Tories, hasn't worked for us. So why do we keep doing it? What's the third option? There's a third option. So I think part of getting Islam in there and seeing Islam as an ideology means actually discussing it, putting it in there, having it as part of the conversation, which is actually doable.
Yeah, I mean the brothers, that do advocate that we should be more involved politically. Yeah. You're saying that we actually kind of pulled ourselves up by our own bootstraps. Is there a benefit to politically participating?
That's a good question.
Can that actually help us?
I think
so. The argument's always been lesser of two evils, right? That's the argument that it's been, right?
Explain that again.
So we know it's haram, right? We concede it's haram, participating in elections, ruling about other than what
a lot of people might not concede that though, innit?
Okay, but the ones who are saying lesser of two evils, they concede that point.
They admit it's evil.
It's evil, right? But then there's another thing, the opposition, and they're even more evil.
They're even more evil, yeah.
So we need to go for the lesser of two evils, right? And they'll come up with some bakwas justification.
Maybe I think what it is they think it's evil, not because of the same reason we would say it's evil. We would say it's evil because from an Islamic perspective, obviously we know the issue with democracy has always been the source of legislation is coming from man, human mind and human beings, and we know Allah is sovereign, and according to Islam, only Allah is the source of legislation. That's the main issue, right? But a lot of the ummah are still, when they say evil, I think they mean, they're evil in the sense that they're going to do less for us. So one is actually more evil than the other. One hates Muslims more.
All right. So let's pick up on that point. Let's pick up on that point. Let's take that. Yeah. So one hates Muslims more, and the other one hates Muslims less. Okay. So we voted in Hamza Yusuf on the basis of he is the lesser of two evils. Who is his opposition candidate? Surely she must have been some proper shaitan, right? More evil. She was the candidate who was saying, "I'm not going to pass through the LGBT view, the bill."
What was the
bill? She was the anti-bill.
What was the bill saying?
So the bill is going to make it easy for transgender people to transgender to operations. And
okay.
Right? So she's the opposition, and he's the candidate who's going to push the bill through. So now, if you're still pushing through, if you're still supporting Hamza Yusuf, why? He's the evil candidate in this story.
That's a good point.
So it shows me. Hold on. It signals to me, hold on, this whole lesser of two evils thing was an alibi from the very beginning. They've convinced themselves, or some sectors of the community, we have to be involved in the process. We just have to. And it's kind of like an irrational, emotional conviction that we just have to. I can't see any way of progressing except this.
I think what it is like when you can't have an inferiority complex, it goes so deep that obviously it's the colonized mindset is that whatever the white man does, no offense, but I'm just joking.
I'm not offended at all.
No, you're not white by default anyway.
It's okay. I mean, I got all the privileges.
Whatever the white man does, all I have to do, because it's like what happened with the Ottomans, isn't it? They looked at the French Penal Code and decided to adopt sections of it because they were looking. What they did is they made there's a saying, the causation was not causation does not equal correlation, right? Meaning, like, just because two things happen at once doesn't mean that was the cause. So what they looked at is the Muslim world is that Western Europe was technologically advancing and they were secular. And so the assumption they made is that their secularism was the cause of their success. They're leaving their religion behind. But that wasn't actually the cause of their success. It was obviously other various factors, colonialism and weaponry and whatnot, savagery and all that, right?
Yes,
a lot of murder, a lot of genocide. But they didn't look at it that way because they were presenting themselves, Western Europe presented themselves as being enlightened, and they are the ones that made the link between their secularism, their beliefs, and their success. But their success didn't come at the cannot be directly linked at all to their ideas.
One example of that is just like how in Dubai that they're building them tall buildings because it does look like the skyscrapers in the West. Even though there's plenty of land, you don't need to build skyscrapers because there is no shortage of area of land. So
doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but they're doing because it does look like what they're doing in the West. So
yeah, because that's what they do in Manhattan, isn't it? Like growing up in New York and stuff, is that I didn't even know this, but the fact that there's so many islands in New York, like Manhattan is an island, and that's like the kind of like the business area of New York City. So naturally, you run out of space, so you have to build upward. But it's interesting because Islamically, it doesn't, like, even practically, like you said, it doesn't make sense because Umar ibn Khattab, he said build a cross. Right? Why did he say that? Did he just say that as a general rule for everyone anywhere? No, because in his specific reality, it made more sense to build a cross. They had space. They had no reason why they would have to build upwards anyways. So, like you said, right? They're just looking at someone else doing something, and because they have that inferiority complex, they assume that if I do the same thing, I will get the same result. So, for example, in America, black people have this thing about straightening their hair, right? Straightening because they've been taught that the texture of their hair is wrong or it's not good enough. So when they go for interviews, in order to look professional, they have to literally change the nature of their hair in order to look more European.
It's like reverse cultural appropriation.
Kind of. Reverse cultural appropriation. That's kind of what it is. It is a cultural appropriation in a sense. But again, they're not appropriating, but they're trying to integrate in order to pass. Or because, who's that famous scholar, that famous philosopher who said in the West, he's, was it a philosopher? I think you're the one who told me one day. He said,
what did he say?
He said, the European, the closer you are to European features, the more civilized you are. Who was it? I can't remember.
I can't remember who said it, but
you remember.
Yeah.
Sounds like eugenicist, didn't it?
Yeah, probably it was eugenics.
Oh no, they were all eugenics.
That was the idea, right?
The closer you are to Europeanness, European features, the closer you are. So when we talk about people passing,
it was one of the U.S. presidents in the 1920s. I forgot his name. But carry on.
But again, it goes back to the color of our skin. Like I have two sons, and I look at my light-skinned younger son, and I look at Musa, my older son, and I can already see their futures in terms of like what he's gonna go through compared to Dawood, my younger one, who's really light-skinned. And I even see the way people engage with him in society. They always go, yeah, he's the baby, but they go for him specifically because he's light skinned, and they say things about him that they never said about Musa. So they will say, oh, he's just so beautiful, and they look obviously just very similar to two brothers, right? But because he's
got the same face, isn't it? But one's slightly lighter.
But because he's lighter, and I see the same thing again with my wife as well, and I see the same thing with my sister-in-law. She, there's a dynamic of someone is darker than someone else. And I see the way other people engage with both of them. And it's different. So one person has to work harder in order to prove themselves than the other, simply because subconsciously everyone around them is thinking, this person, without even realizing, this person has lighter skin, therefore they're more intelligent, therefore they're more civilized, therefore anything positive they do is associated with their, their brightness, and anything negative that person with darker skin, for example, like me, even me, I was light skinned when I was young, but anything I did as a kid when I was light skinned, it was adorable, it was cool, it was acceptable. But when the darker that I started getting, those same things that I would do, it wouldn't be tolerable anymore. It would be seen as something bad, so it became something annoying instead of something cute. See what I mean? So
what's the remedy to this?
Of course, we know the remedy, like being in debt. It's Islam, isn't it? If you go back, trace every action every attitude, mentality, concept, it goes back to a reference point in life, isn't it? And so we see that colorism or racism, tribalism, they all fall under the same umbrella, right? All fall under the same umbrella of asabiya, nationalism, whatever you want to call it. The idea behind this is it has to do with identity politics. And in order to solve this, it's like Malcolm X when he came back from Hajj, he said the solution to racism is Islam, because only in Islam do you see that your identity is no longer based on your color of your skin or your nationality or your hair or the color of your eyes or what language you speak. Everything is stripped away to the point where you are just a person, you're just a human, and your character, your actions, your speech, your heart, these are the things that you're judged by.
I asked you a question, right? You said, I asked you, what is the remedy to this? And you said Islam, and I completely agree with everything you said. I'm going to do something that I promise I'll try never to do again here, which is answer my own question. What is the remedy to this? I want to add something to what you said. I would say thinking. Going through the hard, brutal, and it's painful and it's difficult and you can't be lazy, it's hard. Thinking, actually thinking about things before you just adopt things and take them at face value, right? So I'll give you an example. We spoke about the UAE, right? Qatar, massive petrol producer. A couple of years ago, they approached one of the big consulting firms. I can't remember if BCG, Bain, or it's one of the two Bs. And they asked these consultants to come in and advise them on their growth strategy. And what the consultants said was that, look, you guys are a major oil producing country, gas producing country in the region. What you need to do now to become a heavyweight in the region is control the shipping lanes. So develop your own shipping routes, your own shipping company, have your own ships, and you won't just export your own oil and gas, but the other GCC countries as well. And that will make you a major heavyweight player in the region and globally as well. So what's Qatar's next move? That sounds a bit too controversial. That sounds a bit too, adversarial. We don't want to rock the boat. We'll buy a football team instead. PSG, right? So they spent their billions on doing that. So there's this mentality of we don't want to be adversarial. We don't want to be confrontational. We don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to upset the balance. We want to be super peaceful Muslims, do what we're told, and don't think too hard through your problems. I mean, look at every single one of our politicians in the Muslim world, right? Who among them is thinking, I'm going to solve a problem? I'm going to solve a problem. That's why I'm entering politics. There's a problem, I'm going to solve it. None of them have this mentality. And it's dangerous and it's contagious and it's what infects us. Right? We need to go through the hard process of thinking through our problems.
Yeah, you got like Saudi building NEOM, these new kind of futuristic cities and whatnot.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing you mean, yeah?
So in the absence of thinking, what you're going to do, you're just going to copy. You're just going to imitate. Yeah. That's all there is.
So when you go to back home in Bangladesh, you go and you'll find like knockoff McDonald's and you'll find like bootleg everything. You'll find like, I think it was Coming to America. He did even, in Coming to America, that film, they did knockoff of McDonald's. Yeah. It's like, he can't think of his own thing, so he just knocked it off.
Yeah, that's it.
But because he's like, okay, they did it. I don't want to be original. And I think being original and being able to think, it also takes confidence. Like I said, it's linked back to that not believing in yourself. You've been demeaned through being colonized and constantly told for centuries that your culture or your beliefs, your very existence is just for someone else. You are just the extra in the film. You're not the main character. So if you have that mindset, you will think, well, I want to be the hero, so let me be like him. Like, I need this person's validation, so let me just copy what they're doing. And that's the problem. It's that being an expert in the background mindset. You're just there to fill up the space.
I mean, that's interesting because when you're looking at Hollywood and whatnot, movies these days, the sequels, they're from they're based off intellectual property already out there. You're not seeing much original stuff these days.
Yeah.
So that's it. So talking about that in the context of decline maybe amongst Muslims, but actually we can't see that in the West these days.
But but it's true. It's true what you're saying, and maybe that's true. But the West also went through a long period of thinking. Right? They went down a really
pioneering.
really robust thinking process.
The Coca-Cola age or the Levi's age, as they call it.
Yeah, I mean, it took hundreds of years for them to arrive at the point that they are today, right? With a complete and comprehensive ideology, right? From freedom to secularism to democracy, all of it. It took years and years and years of thinking. Right? The communists as well can do the same thing. And we went through that intellectual process, and actually, Alan was divinely inspired, right? But we thought to ourselves, let's take this nonsense and bakwas instead.
We had a long stretch as well, a very long stretch.
Very long stretch.
We had a very long stretch.
Over millennia.
That's true.
People, they obviously try to downplay it, isn't it?
But I think this comes onto a really interesting point, which is that Muslims, a lot of the time, they think that they have to fall into one of the two camps, the socialist camp or the capitalist camp. How often do you see that? How often do we see that? Especially when it comes to Palestine. We spoke about Palestine, right? How often do Muslims join the Stop the War camp, which are the commies, the socialists? Yeah. How often does that happen? Strikes have been happening recently, and a lot of us, I think, can sympathise with doctors and nurses who are getting paid. Maybe not the railway workers, right? But doctors and nurses, you can probably sympathise with. I mean, £24,000, £30,000 to work as a nurse just isn't enough. Doesn't cut the mustard, right? So we sympathise with them. So some of us might fall into the pro-protest camp, right? And then there's a bunch of Muslims who have made it, and they think to themselves, you know what? Do a job, yeah? Stop moping around, yeah? Don't be lazy, get off the dole, get out there and work and make it like the rest of us have, right? And so you have Muslims who fall into this camp. The mistake is that Muslims choose this side or that side, because there's a third option, which is Islam. I don't know if we want to go into a bit of history here, but there was an industrial revolution here many years ago, right? And the conditions in Europe was horrible. I'll tell you something, right? This is a fascinating story.
So before, I don't mean to cut you off, I just wrote no satellite style.
How do I do it?
It's in the back, it's like a touch. It's on the black ring. On the ring.
Oh, turn the light on?
Yeah, turn the right. It's like a power sign, you'll see it. It's like a blue. Yeah, there you go, perfect.
Now it's all.
Oh, has that been off the whole time?
Yeah, it's been off. I don't mean to, but I didn't want to cut you off. I didn't want to interrupt your flow.
That makes a massive difference.
Yeah.
All right. So in the industrial revolution, the conditions in Europe and the UK were horrible.
Like before the revolution.
This is
during the time when they did toilet in the bucket and threw it out the window.
That's I want you to picture that.
I can think about that when I go to Brick Lane.
So you had the fat cats, right? Who ran the factories. They're making all the money, right? And they're paying people to work in their factories. I'm talking about women and children, right? And they're paying them, what do you think, a lot of money or a little? As little as you can get away with.
Right? Pennies, right?
The conditions. But the problem was that all the jobs were here. So you either did that job and accepted it, or you just starved to death. So people were traveling from all up and down the country to come to London. And they would work in these jobs, and the conditions were really bad. And they got so little money, they couldn't buy bread. So what happened? These kind of black market, back alley bread bakeries started opening up. And they used to mix into the wheat sawdust to make the bread cheaper, right? Now, the politicians were made aware of this issue, right? And they said, well, what's the issue? We believe in freedom, right? We believe that we shouldn't intervene in the market because that leads to the opposite of productivity. We want productivity, right? So let the market flourish. So they allowed the market to flourish until people started coming into work sick and not turning up. And then the factory owners complained to the politicians, and then they said, oh, now we have to ban it on the basis of productivity, right? So as a consequence of all of this, unions started emerging, right? Who were campaigning for workers' rights, better workers' conditions, better pay, right? They were inspired by the socialists, by the way. They were actually socialists. Eventually, these unions, they tagged up, they became the Labour Party in the year 1900s, right? But you had what is the socialists, and you had what is the capitalists. Okay? Why is it that Muslims have to fall into one of these two camps? Islam has a very unique position on these kinds of things. It's not.
What would the Muslim do in such a situation?
So Islam actually has some very it gives rights to the workers. So these are obligations that the employer has over towards the workers, right?
Right.
So he has to provide a wage which is in keeping with the market wage. He can't undercut you because you're desperate for a job. Right? He has to provide certain working conditions. So you find this in our history. You find workers, and even in the Muslim world today, actually, you'll go to Pakistan, Bangladesh, and you find that the business owner has got his employee married, right? He's found him a place to live. I'm sure you have many examples of this. He's living in a shop. He's living in a room on top of the shop, right? They go to these extents to look after their workers. So the employer really looks after his workers, but at the same time, the employee must do everything in his employment contract. You can't mess around with the time.
Yeah.
Right? And how often is it that we see in this country, especially, that people just take the mick?
Pull
You know,
sickies.
pull sickies, right? One brother told me about in his workplace, they actually had a rota for pulling sickies.
No way.
They had a rota.
They had a rota for pulling sickies. You can't go on a strike, because you have an obligation with your employer, right? You said you're going to be there 9 to 5, so be there 9 to 5. So the Muslims work diligently as employees, and the employers gave all of these rights to their employers, but in this country, to their workers. But in this country, you have a situation where people are striking, the government's holding out, right? And it's a kind of a wait and see kind of game, right? Who's gonna drop the ball the first, right? So the nurses went on strike. They were asking for 15%. The government was holding their line. Don't give in, don't give in, don't give in. And the end gave them 5%, which is half of inflation. Right?
Wow, okay.
Isn't it? Think about it from that perspective, right? So the point, because they're thinking, if we give them what they want, they're going to do it more, right? And on the workers' side, they're thinking, well, if we don't do it, we're still going to keep getting abused. So there's this tussle which keeps happening, and sometimes the employer is abusing the employee, and sometimes it goes the other way. The employee is abusing the employer, and people think to themselves, you know what? We'll get these rights if we keep going, we'll keep protesting and keep doing these sickies and putting these sickies and striking. We'll keep going, but remember, this is capitalism, and the moment they'll get the chance, they'll pull back on these rights. Thatcher, think about what Thatcher did to the strikers unions, to the coal unions. It took such a long time for these coal unions to get the rights that they wanted. Overnight, gone. Decades and decades of hard work. All of the unions banned, illegal. So the moment capitalism gets a chance to claw back these rights, they will. Why? Because capitalism values productivity. In Islam, it's not a struggle between the employer and the employees. Allah gives you all of these rights to the employees, and Allah says these are the rights for the employer as well. And leads to harmony. And you find this even in the Muslim world, man. You find people are quite content with looking after their workers, and at the same time the other way around. But in the absence of these rights, you get basically what we see here today. So Muslims, I think my point is that Muslims shouldn't go into the socialist camp, and shouldn't go into the capitalist camp. There's a third view. Learn that view and push it.
That's the thing, isn't it? Because people don't see that third view in action. So because you don't know it's an alternative, you won't entertain it. Yeah, you can't even entertain it. That's interesting.
Yeah. And I think it's like which came first, the chicken or the egg situation, where when you don't have something tangible that we're talking about, Islam is very Islam is a whole way of life. On a state level, it's abstract, right? It's only in books, it's only in theory and in history. And when people generally, they're very superficial, and when they don't see something in action, they don't see the results, they don't flock towards it, isn't it? It's like the Sahaba, there were only a couple hundred Sahaba, when in Medina there were only a few hundred Muslims. But when they conquered Mecca, there were several thousand Muslims, and people that embraced Islam. Why? Because they all of a sudden saw, these people saw an army, a state that has now won battles, has conquered land. They've seen results, right? And the problem is that we need to also provide those results to the Ummah in terms of having an actual state, having the Khilafah, and working towards that in order so that they can, by the thousands of people will naturally, when they see it, every Muslim country will eventually fall in line. It will be like a domino effect. It will happen, inshallah, right? But to get to that point, ironically and unfortunately, you need a certain number of people, not everybody, but you need a substantial amount of people who are able to think, people who are able to go against the status quo and able to spread those ideas about Islam being the alternative way of life.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَنْ يَبْتَغِي غَيْرَ الْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا فَلَنْ يُقْبَلَ مِنْهُ. Whoever accepts or takes for them as their religion, other than Islam, it will never be accepted for us. We only have one option.
Yeah.
It's Islam or everything. Right? Umar bin al-Khattab says, if you don't choose Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will humiliate you. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us one way out of our problems, Islam. And to be fair, bro, we've tried everything else, man.
Yeah.
And it's all flopped, man. Go look at our Muslim countries. Every ism we got, man. We got monarchies, we got democracies. We've done the whole communist thing. That was the big thing back in the day, right? All the Arab commies, man. We tried every single thing, man.
What would you say? I got a question for you.
Yeah,
Let's throw a spanner in the works. What would you say to someone though who would, because this argument that we've tried everything, there's a counter argument say, well, we haven't tried. It's not that democracy has failed us. or nationalism, secularism has failed us. It's just we haven't done it properly because the West have it and they function and they flourish. So clearly we're not doing it properly. So that's one argument.
Yeah, they say that about communism as well,
Yeah,
isn't it?
the one argument that from Muslims in socialist camp and capitalist camp. The other argument is also, I can say the same thing about you. You people, he's talking to obviously Muslims who want to live under Islamic law, want to live under Sharia, Khilafah. They say you have been working for decades, you and your different groups and whatnot. And what do you have to show for it? You still don't have anything to show for it. So you have failed.
Yeah, well, he hasn't worked with us yet. I mean, I think the first point is that, look, you haven't had proper democracy and all this kind of stuff. If Islam had been the problem and all we had needed was more democracy, then why is it that the more democratic reforms that we had under, let's say, the Ottomans, the worse things got? People should have asked at some point, hold on, the more reforms we're having, the worse things are getting. So in fact, the more kufr we have, the worse things get. The more we deviate from Islam, the worse things get. We've never had it better than under Islam, man. We've never. And the more kufr we get, the worse it gets. Look, Islam didn't come to change the color of the walls. Islam came to change the whole world and to take over. Right? I think we've got to put in perspective what Islam really came here to do and accept our cosmic purpose, which is to be ibad of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and make this deen win. And be impactful for this deen. I think it comes down to purpose of life. How do you view Islam? What's your role in this world, man?
What would you say though to someone who says, and this is very popular as well amongst the ummah, that you don't necessarily need, even Yasser Qadi, for example, I was watching a panel discussion of his with a few brothers a few weeks ago during Ramadan about the caliphate, and he said, look, I don't think personally, he said, I don't personally believe that, what did he say, it's detrimental to our salvation to not have a khilafah. Like, I don't think it's essential for our salvation to have an Islamic state. Like, we can achieve eternal salvation without it. We don't need it.
Yeah. I think I saw the same podcast, and was Uthman Badr on that one as well?
Uthman Badr was on there, and Imam Tom was on there.
Imam Tom was on there as well, that's right.
And Imam Tom made a good point as well.
I was kind of stunned what he said. I mean, I don't know, it's a bad mouth, but a person of knowledge shouldn't say this. Yeah, there's a hadith of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam where he says that one day under a just imam is better than 60 years of worship. So imagine that, 60 years, 60 years of continually praying and fasting and dhikr and just non-stop, even the sleep, right? Replace that with ibadah as well, right? So your whole life, 60 years worship. One day under a just imam is better than that. So how can you undermine the importance of khilafah when you're faced with
Where do you think Yasser Qadi was coming? Sheikh Yasser Qadi, where do you think he was coming from when he said that?
So he was very clear. He's very very eloquent. He's definitely a wordsmith, man. He said, look, let's say there's 100 fara'id. There's 100 fara'id, right? And khilafah is one of those fara'id. Khilafah might come near the bottom, number 99, number 100, but you've got looking after your parents, number one, right? Now, we're not disputing the importance of these fara'id. We would just say it's a fara'id, so do it. They're all fara'id. Why would you neglect one? Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you a fard. Why would you not do it? So I find that, I'll be honest, man, I think that's a way of saying don't do that fara'id. You don't need to.
How do you prioritize something which is a fard, and it's not just a fard, it's fard al-kifaya, right? So it's a case of how do you prioritize? It's like you can prioritize it, maybe not. No, I can't do enough right now for whatever reason. But how can you say, oh, I can't do this fard right now because other fards aren't being done? But like you said, all of them have to be done. That I couldn't get my head around. If you agree that something is a fard, wouldn't the next logical question be, okay, how do we go about achieving this fard or fulfilling this fard? That's the next question. The next question on my mind is, where on my list of fard does this would never happen to any average Muslim would never think, if they really thought about the importance of their fard, that wouldn't be the next logical question. Like, where do I place this on the list of importance? I would say, how would I go about fulfilling it, right? Naturally. So to me, that was quite interesting. I mean, I think it was still beneficial.
You know what? I'm actually glad that the discussion happened in and of itself.
Yeah.
Because that's quite beautiful. Monumental, I think. Yeah.
It was very fruitful.
That's a good point. No, I agree with that. At least it's on the table.
We need that more. We need more.
There's more of that to come. Yeah.
We need open dialogue.
So I don't mind the disagreement. Actually, I want to hear it. I think we don't. Like I was saying earlier, I think we don't disagree enough.
We don't disagree
enough.
We don't
disagree enough, man. Let's have the conversation.
Let's have the conversation. Exactly. Because in order to have the conversation of disagreement, we can unpack where it is actually we disagree and what we think we disagree on, but really we're just using different words. Because a lot of time I think is miscommunication. We're actually wanting the same thing, saying same thing, but we're misunderstanding each other for a lack of maybe we're not explaining it clearly enough to the other person. Sometimes I feel there is miscommunication, and it comes with time.
No, I know that's definitely true. It's just we need to go through that rigorous, painful thinking process. Yeah, we need to let's discuss, man. You believe in secularism, I believe in nationalism, you believe in Islam, you believe in something else, whatever other ism. We've got to bring these ideas together, put them to the table, and let them loggerheads, man. Loggerheads. No violence. Obviously, no offending and all that kind of stuff.
Leave the emotions out, leave the personal attacks out,
And if it gets personal, put your ego aside, take it on the chin, be a man. But we need to have the conversation.
I think there is a strength in maturity to being able to tolerate those differing views, and I think that's reflective of a strong civilization. Again, like I was saying, in the West, they're running out of original ideas, but also another thing they're running out of is that tolerance of differing views. Like it's getting so polarized. You go to America, you can see that as an exemplar of the trend. People just can't tolerate, like not accepting a pronoun or this or that. Like it's getting ridiculous. The fact that they can't, tolerate different views like that, that is a sign of the state of things. And if we can, as Muslims, start to let's calm down, let's not get emotional here, let's actually just talk. And we said that I think that's kind of crazy, but let's talk this out. I think that's such a good sign of that reversal,
I agree. It's definitely a sign of maturity. And this is really the only way we're going to get out of our problems. If only a few select people are able to comment on political issues, Sudan, Palestine, so on and so forth, the Ummah's not going to move forward. Everyone needs to discuss these things. Everyone needs to bring their views forward. And to be honest, it's different views. Our ulama used to view different views as a sign of strength, right, and a sign of progress, right. We talk about the main four madahib, but there used to be many madahib, hundreds of madahib who flourished over the years, and maybe they've been forgotten, so on and so forth. But we actually celebrate the variety of views. I bumped into a Christian. He was asking me a really interesting question. He said, "Look, these ISIS people." I said, "Yeah." He said, "What do you think of them? Do you denounce them as Muslims? Are they Muslims? Are they Muslims?" He said to me, and I said, "Bro, anyone who says La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, and believes in the articles of faith, whatever, Muslim, man, Muslim. I don't agree with what he's doing, and if I met someone who's going to do an attack, I'll report him to the police. I'm not going to denounce him." And he was like, "Wow. It's so different to the Christian faith." Right? So we are really tolerant of different views, unlike other worldviews, religion, or ideologies. But I think we don't view it like that anymore. And we need to go back to viewing it like that. Have those tough conversations, debate it out. And this is actually a sign of our strength, and it's our history as well, man. Our ulama were debaters, man. They used to discuss. The Sahaba never agreed, man. They had so many views among themselves, man.
It's funny, growing up, like I'll give you an example, like when you go toilet and stuff, and obviously we use water as Muslims, right? It was seen as in the West and growing up in America as well. America's a lot more hostile towards everything, right? They're just in your face, they're very patriotic, they're very, very one-track minded. So when we use the public bathroom and stuff in school or whatever, we'd be afraid on how to go about using water because we didn't want anyone to find out we use water. And when the other kids would find out, they'd be like, "Wait a minute, you use water in the bathroom? Ew!" One kid goes, "Ew," because they were disgusted with the thought of you washing yourself, which is hilarious, right?
Like using your own hand, you mean like?
Not even that, just using water itself. And I thought about it for a long time and why that is. And obviously, there's a history in Christian Europe of why that is. Because apparently in Christianity in Europe, they used to view being water as a sign of uncleanliness. So in terms of spirituality, being spiritually pure, the less you bathed, the less you washed, the more pious you were.
That's mad. That's mad.
And that's actually where that comes from. Obviously, there's other issues in terms of the understanding of hygiene and that, and the lack of having water, right? So, but the point is, what I was gonna say is like something which is actually more hygienic. We were embarrassed to do, and we were. It's like Umar bin Khattab said, like there will be. I fear for the day when the ummah will become, shy or embarrassed of their deen, and the non-Muslim will become proud of their kufr, right? And that's exactly what we see around us. Like I was at work the other day, a few months ago.
Sorry, man, I got to squeeze this in. How is it that these dirty butts, dirty as well, you have the nerve to lecture us on values or anything?
I mean, your butt first. I'm just trying to see what from their point of view, like.
But it's clever. Think about it. I'll give you another spin. Like think about it on an ideological level. If you have, what some people say. So sometimes I get this criticism from non-Muslims, like. Islam is just so rigid. There's so many rules, and they make it seem like that's a bad thing. They take our strength and flip it into a weakness, when in reality, it's wait a minute, hold on, and we get really defensive. Like, I know there's rules. It's really hard. No. And look at our life. It's so easy. Become a Christian or be nothing, and it's so much easier. You can do whatever you want, right? But they're selling their weakness as their strength, and they're attacking our strength as a weakness. It's very clever.
That's why. That's one of the reasons that compel me to Islam, right? I love rules. I love being constrained by rules. I'm not gonna lie. I probably would live happily under an authoritarian government. But I don't know. I find rules to be like not comforting, but like you feel secure under them. It's like I know where I'm at. Kind of thing.
There's order.
There is that order and there's peace of mind from that. Yeah, and I don't know. It's like when you don't know, because I think back to before. It's like I don't know, like is a bullshit because in RE they'll talk about it's a bullshit, but let's talk about it, and there'll be good arguments for this side and the other side as well. So it's like I don't know where to stand, but Islam has a certain view on that situation, right?
Yeah, that's a very good example.
On ensoulment and all that stuff. So it's like, I know what's going on here. After a certain amount of weeks, the soul is breathed into the fetus, etc. And because of that, the rulings stem from that reality. It's like, I know what's going on, and that clarity that I find that so compelling. Do you know what I mean?
I have this theory, Islam, and when you look at capitalism and Islam, there's a fundamental difference. Capitalism focuses on perception. Western values focus on perception, what they want reality to be. So for example, I feel like this, so therefore I am. Islam always addresses the reality, and that's what a lot of people don't like, because it's about the truth, right? And kufr is about giving you perception, covering up the truth, right? So that's, I think, is a fundamental issue, that whenever you look at Islam, it's dealing with things in a more realistic way, and there's context. Everything is contextual in Islam. That's the other thing. When they have these discussions about abortion or is this right or wrong, whatever, they look at it in a very black and white way, but yet they think, the irony is in the West, they think they're very free thinking and they're thinking about it very diverse, but they're actually thinking about it in a very constrained way. So for example, let's take slavery, right? Slavery, they'll say, slavery is wrong. It was always wrong. It's wrong before when we did it and we made tons of money off of it. It's wrong now, but we still do it, but we do it in China instead and do it in sweatshops in Asia, but it's still wrong, right? So it's always wrong all the time. And even words they use, they don't actually contextualize their words. Like they say slavery or freedom, but they leave it for you to, it's so ambiguous, you can interpret it however you want and such. And they sell that as a strength. Like, hey, look, yes, we can. It's so politically ingenious if you think about how they sell their values, which are not, because look, at the end of the day, the more detail there is behind a value, the more you can see that it makes sense. It can be proven. It's airtight. And the less detail there is, and the less, it's like, when you go to a job interview, and who's a blagger, right? If you're good at, and who's not. So the person who offers examples, offers detail and experience, and breaks down the concepts in a simple way, where other people can understand what's going on, that person knows what they're talking about. Whereas someone else who comes in, got the gift of the gab, right? And it's like, I'm a hard worker, and whatever it takes, that's what I'll do to get it done. can you elaborate on what you mean by that? Whatever it takes, okay, can you give some examples? There's so many various examples of what I've done, and they just go on and on, right? But they haven't actually nailed anything down solid, because there is nothing there. There's no substance. There's no substance to their value, their idea. It's weak. It's empty.
I think at some point we need to open up George's story and how I've actually never heard it from you, bro.
Yeah,
I've never heard it, but just hearing the story now. First of all, congratulations on becoming a Muslim.
Bro, you know,
10 years later,
bro, you never need to see that, bro. I'm not a new Muslim.
Bro, you're not a stingy now, man. That's a big achievement. But just hearing your story, just remind me of my own journey too. I wasn't practicing. I don't think
I think everyone has their own story.
We all have our own journey, man. And I was drawn to the same thing as you were, man. The structure, the order, and the solutions. And I used to have the same debates in my mind about. And there's so many examples, right? Breastfeeding in public, abortion, euthanasia, when is murder right or wrong? I mean, there's so many examples here of where there's contention and people really haven't figured out what's right and what's wrong. And they keep backtracking and then they keep changing their thoughts about these things. And that's a feature of humans, right? Humans, remember COVID, right? Johnson, go out, but don't go out. Go to the park, but don't go to the park. Right? It's a feature of human beings, contradiction, right? And it's a feature of always changing their views about things. So in the beginning, when Islam came out, it was new on the scene, right? Christian Europe was saying about Islam, it's lewd. It's too excessive in the rights that it gives to women. Women can own stuff and work and have their own property and blah, blah, blah.
You're too lax.
That's too lax. And now it's the complete opposite, right? So these guys keep changing their views about what's right and what's wrong. And that used to really, that used to get to my head because I didn't know my day-to-day, on a day-to-day, what's right and what's wrong. I couldn't make sense of all the different views out there. And everyone's saying this is right, and then those people are saying that's actually right. And that really used to trouble me a lot. And it was one of the things that drew me to Islam, because Islam, it has solutions, but it's not just that it has solutions. It fits like a glove, right? It's like it was bespoke for us, right?
Right. It feels like coming home. Like this it suits your fitra so nicely.
Yeah.
It's like
It's like Allah says in the Quran, verily do not follow the majority of the people. Verily, they do nothing but follow conjecture. They do nothing but guesswork. And that's what it is, trial and error. Or just state marriage, 14 years old. Marriage should be 18. I explained this to my son, my older son, and he was so confused. He's like, what, in the same country? You can get married at 18, but you can't get married at 18 in a different part of the country.
Or rather, in America, in the same country, you can have 50 different ages of consent.
Right?
You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he also says, La yukallifullahu illa nafsan wus'aha, right? Allah does not burden a soul more than what it can bear, right? So, to the people who are saying that Islam is too stifling and too restrictive, try communism. Try communism. Try communism, and people who are saying that, it's not enough rules, right? That kind of thing.
The tagline, don't like Islam, try communism.
Do you know what I mean? Capitalism. So capitalism, on the other hand, is like free. There's no guidance. And that actually doesn't fit the fitra. It doesn't fit the fitra, because like you said, it leads to contradiction. You backtrack, you keep changing your views, and on the other side you have communism, which completely limits man, restrains him. You can't earn more than this amount. What's going to motivate you to work hard, man? You're a doctor and you're getting the same as a garbage man. What's going to motivate you to work hard in that situation, right? Do you know what I mean? It doesn't fit the way human beings are. It's like a perfect glove, man. And this is why you find when people become Muslims, congratulations again, they find so much contentment and satisfaction. There's so much happiness, and they really easily mold into the deen. They really easily mold into the deen. That's what it's Islam.
you know what's funny when when secular Muslims or non-Muslims, they say, I don't like organized religion. Do you want it to be disorganized? Do you want chaotic? Like, what does that even mean? Like,
I don't like organized religion. I like my life to make no sense at all.
Trust me.
I like it when I wake up after a weekend party.
You know what they should
no idea what my purpose is.
They should like organized religion. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that had it not been for the worshippers, He would have replaced all of them. Yes, so you should be thanking us for all of your drinking and partying on Friday night. All of your eating and sleeping. You should be thanking us.
I think Christianity ruined religion for everyone, because the thing is, the Enlightenment was that reaction to the harshness that Christianity once held over Europe, right? Then Enlightenment happened. That was a reaction which was opposite end. Obviously, Christian Europe, Enlightenment Europe took over the world, and now they're painting all religion with the same brush. So kind of like it's almost like Christianity's fault in a way. You know? It's a bit weird, isn't it?
Yeah. And actually, if you look at all of their attacks on Islam, it's because of their own history, and it's because of Christianity's flops, right? It's the same things again.
Projection. You know, when you have insecurity, it's like a bully. You project your own insecurities onto others.
Yeah, man.
So you have your own history.
Be original, man.
Yeah.
Be original, man. Make us something new.
It's like you call people infidels. I'm sorry, sir. That's your word. Yeah. We don't have that word. You have blasphemy law. Oh, you mean when the British colonized the subcontinent and they're the ones that introduced British common law? That blasphemy law comes from you. What are you talking about? Like even these terms that you're using, they're Christian terms. They're not.
Yeah, it is actually interesting to look at it from a psychological perspective. It's Christian Europe or secular liberal Europe right now. It's like a person with PTSD, and that PTSD that person has been dealt with abuse by this religious Christian figurehead in the past.
Yeah.
And it's like dealing with their reality now based off that trauma.
Yeah.
It's very weird, isn't it?
It's feminism as well. It's basically like feminist, isn't it? They had a bad experience of trauma with a man, and then it tarred them for life, and they paint everyone with the same brush now. It's like even racist, isn't it? How do you make a racist? Like I know a brother personally. Yeah, sad, very sad. He's Muslim, but he just doesn't like black people, right? Why? Because one time something bad happened to him, and someone burgled him that was happening to black, put a knife to his throat, and because of that, and I said, but bro, that doesn't make any sense rationally, because like how can off of one experience, off of one person, was that person even? What was it? You don't know his beliefs. You don't know anything about him or his history. All you know is that he was black. Based on that, how do you then make that judgment that I don't like anyone that shares the same skin tone as him? How is that?
We need to get a white guy to burgle his house. That's the solution.
Balance it out, yeah?
Yeah, that's it.
Oh man, but yeah, that's the thing. Like, how do you? These are very but back to what you said about thinking. I agree. Yeah, you can't have. That's I think the hardest part for people is that you have to put in work. It's not that I don't agree with Islam or living under Islam or all that, but the truth deep down inside is I don't want to put in the work. I don't want to have to sit down and learn our history. I don't want to have to learn Arabic. I don't want to have to learn about all these complicated topics. I don't want to have to learn about these concepts. I don't want to have to change my ways of thinking. I don't want it, right? It's just too much. I can't handle it, so therefore I need to now feel better about myself. So let me just put you down, or whatever it is you're calling towards. Let me just find a way to discredit you, so therefore I can sleep at night. That's what I need. And I mean, when I wasn't practicing, I remember I used to do this thing where, may Allah forgive me, I used to do this thing where I find practicing people in my family or wherever, friends, and I would have to make fun of them. It was something in me. It's shaitan, isn't it? Yeah. It's that you have to demean them. You have to find some kind of hypocrisy in them in order to tear them down to feel better about yourself. So even though they're praying, they're leaving you alone, they're not even trying to do anything to me, I would still look for a way to tear down one of my cousins. Yeah. I was like, all right, if I could just find one thing he does. I caught you. You
you're so holy after all.
Yeah, you're not so. Yeah. And the funny thing is, when I started practicing, people did the exact same thing to me, and I thought I'm getting a taste of my own medicine now, right?
I got a question. You talk about learning our own history, and that I find that so important because it's your identity as a Muslim. Because obviously, I adopted this shared collective history, right, of Islam. Before in our journeys where we slowly learn about this, about our history, about the story of how Islam came to be, but also the battles over time, Salahuddin, all the good stuff, right? What was can you remember your identity before you actually knew more about Islamic history?
He was a mishmash, man.
It was schizophrenia, I would say.
Yeah.
I would call it. Yeah, at one point I was probably, and for me personally, it was even more, I think, confusing, but it helped in some ways. Like, look, I grew up in America, but I also grew up in Bangladesh, but I also have been in England for over a third of my life. So between these three countries and places that are very different, I went through a lot of identity crisis. Before I even stepped foot in England, I was already at the point where, what am I? Because I'm not, as they call it in Bangladesh, like Bideshi, like a foreigner. I'm not really Westerner, but I'm not really fully Bangladeshi. I'm not really Bengali either, and I'm not really. And even my parents were from different parts of the country, so I'm not even one village thing. You know, they have like Silities and the tribalism, isn't it? So even that I mix. So what am I? Like who am I? I'm speaking English, but then the English people don't accept me. The Bengalis don't fully accept me. The Indians don't like you either because you're Bangladeshi or you're not, or you're Muslim. So the Hindus don't like you, or the Pakistanis don't like you because they're nationalists. And there was a war between us, right? All of this stuff. And then obviously, then the white people don't like you because you're brown, and all of this stuff is going on. Or you don't, or your community doesn't like black people because they think they're better than black people, right? So you have all these different layers of identity politics going on. How do you know who you are? Like who? And I struggle I think since I was like 14, 15 years old. Who am I? Like my friends and stuff, they were all just never thinking about it even once, but they were like, "What's wrong with you, man? Just chill out. Like, why do you think about what your purpose is and you're being a weirdo, right? you're being strange.
Who is Sammy, innit?
Who is Sammy?
What am I?
Yeah, well, who am I as a person, right? Yeah. And exactly what Sheh said. It's such a mix because it's like a leaf blowing in the wind. You're just, one day you're this, one day you feel super nationalistic and patriotic. Yeah, my roots are from Bangladesh and I'm Bengali to the fullest. And one minute you're like, all these Bengalis are backward. I'm a Westerner and I'm better than them, right? And then the next minute you're like, you get cussed out by a racist person in England, and the next minute you feel like, no, bun all these Westerners, and you're just going back and forth.
Yeah, that's my, Well, I mean, what was your perspective, bro?
So I went through a very similar journey. When I was about 16 years old, I went on a school trip to New York. Yeah, we went to a fancy school, right? And all of us kids we're going there for a Model United Nations conference, which is like a pretend one for kids.
Yeah.
And in the airport, I remember it's a JFK airport.
What country were you, by the way?
What country was I? I can't even remember. Did you go to that one?
They had a similar thing at my uni.
Oh really? I can't even remember because they do have all the chairs around.
I tried it once, like for one meeting, and I left. But
I lived around the corner.
So I remember at an immigration being picked up one by one, right? And we go because of a very mixed school, right? Muslims, Jews, Christians, Hindus, everyone.
Wow.
And it was Ahmed, and it was Gibran, and it was Ashraf, and it was Muhammad. I probably shouldn't use their actual names, right? And then it was me as well, right? And we were all taken to a room. And I was acutely aware of, hold on, it's all the Muslim kids here. Yeah. And we were bullied and picked on by the security guards, right? It's quite a funny story, actually, yeah? There was one kid there who actually wasn't Muslim. But you couldn't tell it because he looked full on Taliban. Yeah? So every time we got called up, we were called up one by one. Why are you here? What's the purpose of your visit? Where are you staying? How long are you staying here? And do you know what Osama bin Laden is? Yeah. All your standard questions.
We're not even trying to hide this.
Where's Carmen San Diego? Where's Osama bin Laden?
So he asked us the questions one by one, and me being quite sensible, I'm like, no, I don't know, right? Like he's my uncle or something. Right? Oh yeah, just the other day he was. So he's asking us these questions one by one. Now the one question, he looks all Taliban-y, isn't Muslim.
What's his name? Bob.
It's Baldeep or something, right? It's Baldeep, right? It's Baldeep, right? Okay. Now Baldeep, you know how things like to drink, right? Okay. He's been drinking the whole flat. There's little 50 million little bottles.
You know how things like to drink.
He's been downing on the whole flat.
What school have you been going to, bro? What school?
So he arrives at the airport and he's buzzed, yeah. He's buzzed. He's off his face, right? And they ask him where he's staying, what are you here for? Where is Osama bin Laden? And they're frisking him while they're doing it. And he goes, well, you're not going to find him in there, governor.
What a joker.
So jokes aside, that was the first time I realized they treat me like I'm Muslim. And they don't really like me. Right? So I became really, really clocked onto this whole identity thing. And I started searching from there. That triggered it for me. Because I started feeling different. Because I tried, like you did, man. I was a comedian, man. I hung out with the white guys forever, but then they start gunning Islam and they start gunning Asians, and I was like, well, these guys don't really like me, do they, right? And I felt like sometimes I was really bad. I joined in on it as well, right? And then you hang out with the Asians, and you hang out with the Asians, but you don't really fit in with them either. There's Sikhs and Hindus among you, so you go on this kind of journey, and alhamdulillah, when you I've never felt more at home than when I was in Egypt. right, in a place called Medina al-Nasr. Right, it's a place in Cairo, full of students who are studying at Al-Azhar or other institutions. And the reason I felt at home there was that these are people who thought like me. They didn't always look like me, although Egypt's looked like all types, right? But they thought like me and they behaved like me as well. So this idea of we are the rightful inheritors of the earth. There's a battle between Islam and Kufr until Yawm al-Qiyamah. We have this incredible heritage and history, like we were talking about. This idea, these thoughts are very much alive in the mentality of people living in that area. So I felt more at home there than in Bangladesh, which is my origin, but then here, than any other place that I've been in the world. I felt like I was with my people. And they treated me like them as well.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, I think I had in Jahiliyyah, like I had that kind of. I could empathize with where you're coming from because I'm half Greek, half Serbian. I don't speak fluent Greek or Serbian. it's not really good. And then I'm living in England. My mum and dad are freshies, technically, right? And it's like, I don't really feel British because NATO bombed Serbia actually. I would, that was a whole thing, right? Back in the 90s. But so it's like, okay, I don't feel really at home here. I didn't feel, like the values, even the like Western values. I didn't feel that I was completely liberal at the same time. And it's like, am I Greek? Am I Serbian? Let's see. I was trying to be Serbian. I was trying to kind of like just get close to that identity. But then when you don't speak the language, like there's only so much you can do, right? So that was a whole mess in my head as well that I felt. So I could empathize where you guys were coming from as well. Yeah, it's mad.
I think
Congratulations.
I think we'll end it there, inshallah. Unless anyone has anything else more to add, I think we'll wrap it up for Maghrib, inshallah.
We're just finishing the congratulations.
Congratulations, bro. Congratulations. He'll get you a gift later, bro.
Yeah, thank you.
He hugged you, bro. After Shahada that.
So again, 11 years later, you're safe.
Well, have you seen that video that Bagali Imam in Ramadan, he's like doing the Shahada, like someone's taking the Shahada, this Jamaican revert brother, and he's like,
so funny.
And the Bagali brother, his accent's really thick, right?
Yeah.
So he goes, repeat after me in English, and he goes, I bear witness. He goes, I bear witness. And the brother goes, I bear witness. And he goes, he's no partner. He's no partner. And then he goes, excuse me, what? He goes, he's no partner. He's no partner.
He has no partner.
And then everyone else is like, he has no partner.
And the poor guy, the Reaver, saying, he's no partner.
He goes, he's no partner. He thought he switched from English to something else. He then went back to Arabic, right?
No, what would be sick if the Jamaican guy copied his accent as well?
He did.
He did. So funny.
Bro, he said, because he didn't know he was speaking English. Because he was like, he's no partner. He goes, he's no partner. Bro, it's too much, man.
That's funny. That's funny.
Oh my days.
That's good, man.
I think this is a good show, man. I think it was alright. We got some nice little bits in there. Man.
Little bits in there, yeah. Inshallah, obviously we'll get better. Inshallah, the more we. I think it's just think about topics. Come with whatever. That's the point. Like I don't want to force anyone to think you have to come. Just come with whatever you want to talk about, and we'll study whatever intrigues you. Or I had this little nugget. I had this anecdotal, historical stats, whatever. Bring it all together and just let it flow.
I reckon we can just like maybe do a little bit of homework of what's happening, just read about it and just go from there, use it as a seed.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted, like, because I'm going to chop this whole thing up. So, for example, right now, literally, if I wanted to talk about, I don't know what's happening with Imran Khan. No, just let it keep rolling. Like, Imran Khan, for example, what happened with Imran Khan? You know what my take home is from what's happened this week?
Go on.
A few things. Democracy and elections, they don't solve the problem that people are trying to solve by voting someone in, because people's problems go back fundamentally to economic problems, lack of jobs, cost of living crisis. These things everywhere on the world, everyone has fundamentally, Muslim countries, non-Muslim, same problems, right? They're thinking about crime, they're thinking about their security, they're thinking about how cost of living, how they're going to raise their families. Fundamentally, most of our concerns are all the same. They're human problems, right? But they're not. Every time you elect a leader or a political party, they're not there to solve fundamental human problems. They're there to go through their term, work on their
Fill
career,
their pockets.
make one step forward maybe, and the next guy's gonna come in, he's gonna go 3 steps back and reverse whatever you've done, and make a couple of false promises along the way to get that vote, and then not keep those promises. Like it obviously happens all the time. They said no more tuition fees in England, for example, and the next thing you know, they did the complete opposite. They said actually tuition fees are gonna go up like 10 times, right? So you can see that there's nothing binding in democracy. One that keeps people from that keeps politicians from having to illegally binding, that keeps them contractually obligated to their word, to their campaign promises. Nothing. And it's funny because if you did the same thing in a regular job, you'd get fired the next day. And the privilege of being a politician in a democracy is you don't even get fired. You literally resign at 8 a.m. and leave the country without a prime minister. Right? That's the type of level of privilege you have. You do 2 months. Like, what's that prime minister that came in for 2 months? She did like a secondment. She did a fixed term contract. She did a fixed term contract for like 2-3 months, right? She covered maternity leave or something. Right. And I don't know what she did, but she came in for like 2 months and she walked away with more money than people making an entire year, right? In this country on average.
I wonder that's one of the reasons that Muslims do not think about politics in the Islamic context as much, because you see that madness, the abuse taking place. They say, okay, politics is a dirty thing that these...
It's the trauma attached to all the stigma.
There you go.
Like you said, right, about religion, Christianity, right? Yeah. It's actually Christianity's fault. It's actually the Western world's fault that people have such a bad idea of what politics is. Because when we talk about politics or terms like war and all these things have an ideological framework behind them, and there's a context. So we really need to be clear on, even when we say politics, because the word for politics in Islam is siyasa, right? We know that it means to take care of the affairs of the people. Yeah. And I explained to even Musa the other day, he asked me about democracy because they had an assembly where they were learning about democracy is wonderful, blah, blah, blah. So he said, now tell me what it really is.
Oh, really?
Right? Yeah. What is it really? And I said, look, in democracy you can vote, in Islam you can vote, but there's a difference. The conflict between democracy and Islam is that in democracy, people get to decide what's right and wrong, but in Islam, only Allah, the one who made people, gets to decide what's right and wrong. And so, they can't say that. So instead, when they talk about democracy, they just say, oh, look, you get to vote and have a say. But the truth is, you don't really get a say either way, because the people who have all the power and influence are the ones that make all the decisions anyway, regardless of what you want. They're the ones that make the real decisions, right? So it's not even you.
What reminds me of was that big million-man march prior to the Iraq War.
Yeah.
The support, or rather the support for not going to war was massive. They did it anyway.
Yeah, so this
if they want it, they will get it.
It really shows that the public have no say in the direction of the country.
Nothing.
The politicians don't care about that. Look, before the politicians made a promise to us, who did they make a promise to? To their party, to their sponsors, to their donors. And so those are the interests they really look after, man.
Big money in it.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, man, absolutely. And look, you spoke about broken promises, right? Obama broke a record for the number of broken promises, man. During the election campaign. Yeah, he broke more than 100.
But he's black though, bro. What are you talking about? He's black. He's from Hawaii. His last middle name's Hussein. How could you do that to us? He could be Muslim.
Even Trump said he'll build the wall, right? Trump said he'll do over Hillary for those text messages and whatever.
The emails
that he ended up doing himself. Right? He said he won't play golf. He broke records, man. His own records.
I'm not gonna lie. I miss Trump. I miss him so much. I love it. It's amazing.
Straight talker. Well, he bombed less than any other president before him.
He's like, the system is rigged. The system is rigged.
I know, because I'm taking part in it. He doesn't care.
He's like, I take part in it.
That was bad.
The system is rigged. They all know it's rigged. And then, sir, do you have any evidence for these claims? I am the evidence. Look at me. I'm a waste man, and I'm becoming president, running for president, right?
Amazing.
It's amazing, yeah, subhanAllah. So it's like democracy and the Western world is like becoming a parody in and of itself. Yeah. Almost like they're parodying themselves. But back to my point anyways, like, so for example, in this week, where also my take-home message was, if you truly want to change the society, like in Pakistan, Imran Khan, what happened, one thing I've learned is that you cannot truly change the direction of a society unless you do two things. you need the support of the people. And when I say people, I don't mean each and every individual, but you need a substantial amount
critical mass
critical mass of people, right? And you need the support of the people of power and influence, meaning the armies or tribes, depending on what country you're in contact with, right? Who holds power militarily and physically. And without these two areas of support, it will eventually fall into a civil war because it will become lopsided. So in Pakistan, like even in the past, you see in Egypt what happened. The people supported the Muslim Brotherhood. Obviously, naturally, they got elected in, but the army was in the pockets of the Americans. So the army then obviously didn't support the Muslim Brotherhood, and naturally the army took over, right? In what's it called? In Syria, which has been in civil war for the last. There's nothing civil about it, right? But for over a decade now. Why? Because on one hand you had the public, the critical mass of the people who wanted one thing, which is Islam, to live under Islam, and then you had the other section of which is the people of power and influence, the army. Maybe you had a few defections here and there, but realistically, it wasn't substantial enough, or there wasn't enough groundwork done to overpower a situation where you could remove the current regime and place, have a new system. Because again, Russia's involved, but aside from all that, the point is you need a substantial amount of support from the people of power, and you can't do it without it. Because look at Imran Khan, yeah, he's loved by the people, but look, it's kind of like a stalemate. It's a situation where there's so much tension between the people and the army now, and it shouldn't be like this. Because even if we, obviously the reason I say this isn't just obviously my own opinion. If we study the Sirah, we look at the life of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, this is exactly what he did.
I'll ask you something, yeah? I'll ask you a question that Robert asked me. Why don't we fight the army?
Ooh.
Why don't we fight the army?
They got the guns and we don't.
Well, why don't you fight the army?
It's an obvious answer. It's an obvious answer. They got the guns and you don't.
And the training and the know-how. And
practically speaking, they got the guns and you don't. But I would personally not get involved in that.
What if you get guns as well?
Yeah.
And what if you get training as well? And now you have a civilian army.
Well, yeah, you got.
It just ends up in guerrilla warfare and civil war. You're not gonna. You will listen. It's no point being in charge of a land that is in ruins and rubble. Doesn't make any sense practically. Who does that benefit? It only benefits those who seek for you to be in destruction. It only seeks the weapons companies. Yeah, it seeks the people who profiteer from war. You, like for example, Sudan. What's happening in Sudan?
That's right.
You are at loggerheads right now. Being used as pawns, fighting a proxy war.
At least in Sudan, America had to pay for the privilege of getting Muslims to fight each other. They got to fund both sides, right? They got to fund both sides, but you're going to do it for free. You're going to
do it for free. But the point one brother made about Sudan is he said, Wallahi, what is this problem in the ummah? I think it's my brother-in-law who said that. He goes, they'll literally fight each other, but they won't go and liberate Palestine. They have a paramilitary that's the size of an army. You two armies together would literally probably be able to liberate Palestine, and yet you are fighting at the behest of being used as pawns for the world superpowers. So
I think that's a deep point. I think people have it all wrong when it comes to the army, especially people living here very far away from the situation. When you have family who are in the army, like we do, right? You realize that they're actually, a lot of them are just like us. They're ordinary people, man. So, okay, the top brass have sold out.
Alexa, stop.
Jokes.
So it's true, the top brass have sold out.
The army, bro, that's what happened.
The microphone turned off.
Top brass are sold out, but there are a lot of people, middle-ranking officers here who are just like us, man. I don't know if you want to cover the story today, but I actually had a run-in with Bangladeshi soldiers when I was in Bangladesh, for a whole platoon of them. I don't really call it a platoon or whatever you call it.
You ran into
So basically, okay, I'll tell you the story. I've got to tell you, George. You've heard it a million times,
Go on.
So basically, when I was in Bangladesh a couple of years ago, we went to the Burma refugee Rohingya camps.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's just on the border with Burma, right?
Yeah.
And to get into those camps to begin with, you need to have connections with the army, which my family had. And so we went into the barracks, the army barracks, and there's maybe 100, 200 soldiers there. And, I had to say something. So I stood up and in my crappy Bengali, Bangla, I said, don't you feel any shame?
Yeah.
Give me that gun.
Stop.
So I said to them, don't you feel any shame?
Someone's trying to call me. Give me a message. Alexa, stop.
So I stood up and I said, I think for the next podcast we got to turn this one off.
Yeah.
I saw that. I thought, I hope nothing's gonna happen. But anyway, yeah.
So I said to them in my crappy Bengali, "Don't you feel any shame? If you're not going to use it, give me the gun.
Raw.
Give the girl the gun, give the boy the gun, and we'll go and protect Muslims." And there was a pin drop silence in the room, and then some of the brothers said, "We do feel shame.
Alhamdulillah.
We do feel
At
shame."
least they feel in the heart.
No, 100%. And they said, "We're waiting for the order. We're ready. We're waiting for the order." And then someone else spoke, and I think this is the security officer, right? And he said that, or the intelligence officer, and he started speaking to me in English, like really, really quality English, and saying, "Look, China too strong, India too strong, America are against us." And it was a simple conversation. I said, "Okay, are they stronger than Allah though?" Do you know what I mean? In Tansurullah yansurkum wa yuthabbit aqdamakum, right? And then he says, "But they're not Bangladeshi." Yeah, I said, okay. وَمَا لَكُمْ لَا تُقَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. This is the ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to the Muslims who are in Medina.
You know them ones when you're just replying to them in ayat.
Yeah. They'll be like, "Oh,
you can't argue against it.
Yes, and bro,
Sorry,
and so this ayah is talking about the Muslims who are in Medina, telling them there are Muslims left behind in Makkah who are being persecuted, men, women, and children, and they are making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah, send us someone who will liberate us and protect us from this evil people and send us out of this town of evil oppressors." Right?
Yeah.
So what is wrong with you that you don't fight to liberate them?
Ya Allah.
So Allah's talking to them, Allah's talking to the Palestinians, Allah's talking to the Burmese, Allah's talking to all the Muslim countries and those who are capable of resolving the situation. Say, what's wrong with you? Fight, protect your brothers and sisters. So again, this ayah as well, and you can see, bro, a lot, they look like me, not like you. They look at us, right? They've got beards, some of them have beards, so they're practicing, and they're not all the same. Some of them disagree with us, some of them agree with us. They're like how the Ummah is, right? The same doubts that plague our minds plagues their minds. America, India, we're too weak. Which, by the way, is the soundbite that comes from the rulers.
Yeah.
All the time. No one else.
Should have said, "How'd you be Pakistani and a lungi then?"
Exactly. It's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting because I only hear Muslim countries say this, right? Pakistani Muslims say we're too weak. They're hearing it from the rulers. You never hear Indians say it.
Oh,
you never hear Indians say it. You never hear other non-Muslim countries, poor as they are, you never hear them say it. Right?
Too weak.
It's a soundbite, right? It's a soundbite. So
we need rehab, bro.
So all these voices out there, who are saying we have to fight the army, or the army are the enemy, the army are the problem, bro. The army is me and you, bro. The army is me and you, bro. And yes, the top brass have sold out, just like the politicians.
It's still part of the Ummah, yeah.
But the rest of those guys, they can do a job, man.
Us, yeah.
They can do a job. And how often is it in our history that there's been a coup and it's a middle-ranking officer who was Musharraf, bro? No one knew about this guy Musharraf, bro. He's a random guy who came on the scene. When he came on the scene, no one batted an eyelid because he had no history. No one knew anything about the guy. Right? This happens all the time.
Bro, even Gaddafi, bro, my guy came in with a pistol and two guys. I don't know, like a few guys, and just he just televised the Khalas. It was I can't remember when I read about it. It was just there was minimal amount of people involved. Like you can blag your way in.
Absolutely. But it's right what you're saying. You need army. You need critical mass of people. Yeah. I think people also haven't got their eye on the right thing. What needs to change? Right? There are some features, systemic features, which need to change in our countries. And if I was to list them, I would say one: our rulers aren't the real rulers of our countries. Yeah. All of our countries, they tie themselves to some kind of foreign power, Britain, France, America, that kind of thing, yeah? So we're not the real rulers of our country. That's the first thing that needs to change. We really need to take charge. The second thing, right, when everyone goes in, they're going for a short-term kind of money grab, right? It's about filling your pockets here. No one's there doing it for the long term. That's something that needs to change, right? The army or the people in power, they're the ones you need to have on side. There are some systemic features which need to be got rid of, right? And I don't think Muslims generally have clocked onto all of these things. We've seen the symptoms of the problem, but what are the causes? What actually needs to change? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These are discussions that need to be had.
Inshallah, we will continue this. Some of you brothers may be available for the next one. We'll maybe have some new brothers as well. But yeah, definitely, I think these discussions we need worth continue having, and maybe inshallah next time as well we can kind of get into some other topics as well, family life and what we're doing with kids. And you got any kids yet, bro?
I got one little one.
MashaAllah, inshallah. We'll get into that soon. Stay tuned. I don't know if I'm going to release this, but if I do, I'll use this for an ending.
This might be the only episode with you in front of the camera, bro.
Jazakallah khair.
Let's end with Surah Al-Asr.
Inshallah.
The Sahaba radiallahu anhu, when they used to gather and they used to disperse, they would recite together Surah Al-Asr. So when Asr, إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ.
That's time. We'll just stop there.